In this presentation, we will set up a QuickBooks account which we will use for our personal finances. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. We'll start out by opening up the QuickBooks program. We will be using QuickBooks 2019. You can use prior versions in a similar fashion. QuickBooks may open to the prior company file that you have been working in, as we have done here. It's opened up to our business account. We want to start a new file for the personal account. So we can do this by closing out the current file that we are in, or we can just start the company file from here. For example, if we go to the file dropdown, and if we were to just go to new company, it would then close the current company we were in and go through the new company process. For purposes of the example, I'm going to go and close this company file out and see what the screen would be like if there were no company file open, which may look something like this. We then have these files here that are files that we've opened up recently. Note that you don't want to depend on these files. If you are using multiple desktop files and you're working within them, you don't want to depend on these because you don't know where they actually are in your computer. Or if you use these, just also know where they're actually located on in the computer, because if anything changes, you're going to need to find the file. So just make sure that you have an idea of where they are within the system. Now we're going to go to the File tab and we're going to start a new company. So we'll start a new company file. As we do this, we will go through the process of putting it into a particular folder, or at least the process of knowing where QuickBooks has set up our company file. We are not going to use the interview process down here. We're going to go straight through the Start Setup, which will be the easy, fast setup file. So we're going to start setup. We're going to put the minimum amount of information so far, which is going to be just a personal account. I'm not going to name it a business account. We're just going to call it the personal file. You could call it whatever you want. Of course, it's your company file or your personal file. But I just want to distinguish between the personal file and the business file, so I'll just name it the personal file. It's important here to choose the right industry, which in our case is none, because we're going to use QuickBooks in order to set up our own list of accounts. This is the key to setting up for the personal file. In other words, when you choose an industry, if we go to Help Me Choose, then it'll give a list of industries. If we were to choose, say, a generic service company, it will then give us a list of accounts. Now, some of these accounts might be good. We might say, hey, I want these accounts, but they're geared towards business. And business is geared towards revenue generation as being the main goal. And that's why tracking for business items are actually easier in a lot of ways than personal items, because we know what the objective is. The objective for the business is to generate revenue. And there's been a very systemized system to do that and be able to track the information. The objective of QuickBooks often is to conform to reporting at the end of the year, to have standardized accounting reports, and all that is standardized, which makes it nice. But for the personal objectives, the objectives are different, meaning the objective is to group the information in any way that I think is best for our personal knowledge. We don't have a goal of just revenue generation, but to know what we're spending on, to be able to budget in different ways, and the way we want to budget might be different. We might have different needs. So in other words, these list of accounts might be appropriate for our personal settings, and we may use accounts that are very similar in nature, but they might be different as well. We might want to track particular restaurants that we go to. We might want to differentiate, this type of entertainment from a different type of entertainment, movies from restaurants, or the vacation versus different. And those are different types of groupings than we would have in a business setting, possibly. So what we want to do then is set up our own list of accounts as we go. We're just going to start from scratch. We don't want any accounts in there. And we'll just build what we think is the best grouping for ourselves. And we'll discuss the method for doing that. And so we're going to say, okay, that's going to be the main thing. Now, for the business type, usually QuickBooks is used for business. So we could go down here and say other. And this is where most people say, hey, look, you can't use QuickBooks because it's used for business. But it's going to be the same thing. In terms of a personal setup, there is no equity kind of side of the equation. So all we're really doing when we do a setup like this in terms of QuickBooks for our purposes here is telling QuickBooks, hey, this is what the equity side should look like. And this is how we want to track the equity side. Now, on the personal side of things, in other words, if I choose a sole proprietor, it means there's only one owner. So when you talk about the equity side, it should be in terms of who owns it, one person. When you have a corporation, then it's owned by stockholders. And when you talk about the equity side, you should be naming stockholders. When you have a partnership, we have multiple owners. And when we talk about equity, we want to break it out between different people. When we talk about our personal finances, we're kind of like a sole proprietor if we think of ourselves as an individual, us tracking the information, and we want to see the net worth. Or if we're a family, a group of people, then we're thinking of the net worth of the family, which I would still group as a sole proprietor. If, however, you want to track different people, kind of like allocating ownership or allocating net worth to individuals in the family, say like a spouse, two spouses, and kids or whatnot, and we want to track that more like a partnership, you can do that. You could say, okay, I want to be a partnership and look at different, allocate the owners minus the liabilities to two partners and look at their investments. But that's usually more complicated, and I don't recommend doing that unless you feel confident and comfortable doing that. Easiest way to set it up is as a sole proprietor. I'm going to set it up as a sole proprietor as if, and that just means for our personal purposes, we will have one equity account giving us the net worth on the balance sheet side. So we'll see more how that plays out. We're not going to enter an EIN. We don't need the address or anything. This is just tracking our personal records. So we're going to create the company. Again, as we create the company, QuickBooks will say, hey, do you want payroll? Do you want checks and whatnot? And we're going to say, no, not right now. We're going to close up their window here for the new features. And then here's our open windows. And again, I typically by default go to view and the open windows. So here is going to be our chart of our QuickBooks file. Note that, again, it put it somewhere and we don't know exactly where it is. If I open up QuickBooks again, it'll open to this file. But it's nice to know where it is, especially if I have two files. So if we go to the File tab and we go to Open Previous, it'll give us kind of a mapping of where it is on our computer. If we want to copy it and paste it or cut and paste it or move it, we can go to this location. Notice that if you do cut and paste it and move it, then you're going to have to close this file and then be able to move it with this file not being open. So you might have to copy this formula or screenshot it, put it somewhere else, find the file, move it to where you want it so you know where it is, and then go back into it directly from that location. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.